crush your enemies.
They drew first blood, not me.
See them driven before you.
Oh, my user.
And hear the lamentation of your women.
But I pity the fool.
Glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate.
Oh no.
They're here.
Oh, real light sleeper, child.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in chronological order, overanalyzing what you've seen and spoiling what you haven't. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today we're discussing Wrong is Right, released May 14th, 1982. It was written by Richard Brooks, based on the novel by Charlie McCarry, directed by Richard Brooks, and released by Columbia Pictures. In 1979, Charlie McCarry's novel The Better Angels was published. The title is a reference to the closing sentence of Abraham Lincoln's first inaugural address, or his inaugural address?
No.
Which appears in the book as an epigraph. The mystic chords of memory stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land will yet swell the chorus of the Union, when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. Writer, director, producer Richard Brooks secured the rights to the poorly received novel and somehow got the adaptation greenlit by Columbia execs Frank Price and John Veitch. He made a deal with Sony to use their monitors in many scenes as product placement to recoup some of the film's expected $12 million budget.
What?
Though the finished product came in $2 million under budget, so $10 million total.
What did you waste $10 million on in this movie?
There's a lot going on in this movie.
Well, okay, fine. Yes, but...
And a lot of travel, and a lot of craziness, and a lot of famous actors.
I stand by the word waste.
Yes. No, I don't disagree that it was wasted, but I can see how it was spent for sure. Barbara Hershey was briefly attached, presumably in the Sally Blake role, but obviously that came apart, and that's a very small role, so that might have been why she didn't stick around for it. When the film failed to connect with audiences, winning back a mere 1/3 of its budget, it was retooled for international markets with a Bondy poster featuring Sean Connery holding a camera like a gun, draped in bikini models, with a new title, The Man with the Deadly Lens, as a clear reference to the Roger Moore Bond title, The Man with the Golden Gun. I also want to mention that the trailer we played at the end of last week's episode features a speech from President Mallory that doesn't appear in the film, where he spews a lot of homophobic nonsense, but it didn't make the final cut, probably because they wanted us to like his character a little bit more. We start the film on a terrible miniature of a satellite in space opening up to beam messages down to Earth.
Now, I was confused at this point because I couldn't remember if you told me if this movie was a parody or not.
The book is more blatantly a parody, I would say, than the film is.
Yeah.
It is a parody, and it has so much in common with Iger Sanction, and I'll circle back to that at the end, but
yeah,
they both fail by being a little bit too subtle.
Yeah.
And also, I should preface this whole story by saying, so much happens in this movie, but almost nothing happens in this movie.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a lot of talk, and you're going to be like, am I following the story? It seems like not much has happened. Not much has happened. Nothing much happens in the movie, but stuff's happening in every scene.
Yeah. Which is very confusing as you're watching it, to be honest.
And the book is 10 times worse because it's so much slower to work through the story.
Mm-hmm. I guess I asked because I couldn't tell if I was supposed to think that this looked bad on purpose or if it just looked bad.
No, I think that was the extent of what their budget could reproduce here. I don't think it looks cheap. I think the story is just not well done. But it looks like they spent a lot of money on it.
Well, we'll get into it, I know, but to me, like, the story couldn't focus on whether or not it wants to be like a gritty international thriller or a satire about the news media.
Right.
And it didn't do either.
Yeah, it definitely is following in the footsteps of mostly Dr. Strangelove, I would say, with like a nuclear age, geopolitical comedy drama. But we also have little bits of like network in it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I feel like it doesn't really get what's going on in either of those two stories enough to properly duplicate what was successful about them.
Well, and this miniature that we get in the beginning is just the only one, because after that they just go to straight up drawings.
Yeah, or we'll see this one repeated again later. Sean Connery had better model satellites than Diamonds Are Forever 11 years earlier. Some of these are even 2D magazine cutouts sliding over an oversimplified illustration of Earth's surface. Like, I don't know why this is a watercolor painting of Earth for them to float over.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Connery's voice reads us a prologue.
It was a time when outer space was filled with incredible machines, whose telescopic eyes and ears witnessed our most sensitive secrets. Information that could and did change the fate of nations. It was a time when no one on Earth could hide from technology. No people, no continent, no one was safe from spy satellites. It all could have happened in the recent past, or the present, or even in the near future. But it didn't. It did happen in that elusive time between now and later. That time when dark is light, when down is up, when foul is fair, when...
A musical sting coincides with the appearance of the film's title, Wrong is Right. But stepping back a second, the narration just said it didn't take place in the near future, but isn't the time between now and later the near future?
Yeah.
It's after now, but it's before later. That's
This whole
textbook
dialogue
near
is
future.
just nonsense.
Right.
I don't even, yeah.
They
doesn't
just
even make
wanted
sense.
a reason to say wrong is right at the beginning of the movie, and they didn't really get there.
I also don't feel like all of the technology we're about to see is all that futuristic looking.
Right. This
No.
could have taken place in 1982.
Yeah.
We see a satellite recording footage of New York City from space, and then a collection of aerial stock footage around Central Park. An elderly woman is attacked by muggers, but unexpectedly fights back and beats them to the ground. We see men robbing a bank on the Universal backlot. Then we cut to a living room where a woman approaches her sleeping husband Harry on the couch, and once she has his attention, she fires a shotgun at him. Suddenly, Sean Connery as Patrick Hale is standing over her in the living room, interviewing her about how long she's dreamed of this moment. Turns out this was all an elaborate simulation of some sort, and the woman did it for therapeutic reasons. So the moment goes from feeling like Death Race 2000 to feeling like Westworld. Somehow this is a service offered for a mere $400 by a company that allows you to reenact violent fantasies on a custom set. Next, Patrick interviews a young Jennifer Jason Leigh about how she feels now that she's pretended to poison her parents using their program.
Why do you hate them?
Oh, I don't. It's just like they're, useless.
Don't you feel guilty?
I'd rather live with the guilt than with my parents.
What if they're watching this broadcast?
God. I hope so.
I showed this clip to my niece to see if she could
Recognize her?
recognize her. I knew she probably wouldn't, but because I barely did until
I didn't.
Yeah, because I looked at it. I was looking at the cast and I said, "Oh, Jennifer Jason Leigh is young girl," and so I just immediately was looking for young girl, and I was like, "Oh, well, that's definitely her."
Yep.
But she was very excited because she loves Hateful Eight.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so I was like, "Let's Daisy Domergue."
There you go. The camera backs away from the interview to reveal Patrick is a celebrity news anchor, and he's presenting this violent simulation program to his audience and questioning whether or not it solves problems or presents new ones. Everyone in the control booth looks very happy with the broadcast, and his producer Harvey, played by Robert Webber, learns over the phone that they have achieved their highest ever Nielsen ratings, which is not something that would ordinarily be reported live, not at that time anyway. The ratings were something that would be reported the next day.
Well, how fancy of technology do they have? Live Nielsen's.
But I believe the word he uses is we have the biggest Nielsen. And I was like, no, the biggest Nielsen is yet to come.
Ah, Leslie Nielsen. Nielsen ain't got no statue? Not just Nielsen's should have one. It feels like the character he's playing is kind of a blend between the Peter O'Toole director character from The Stuntman and Peter Finch's newsman character in Network, crossed with like a Ron Burgundy type polished anchorman character. We get a montage of Patrick Hale working in wartime, severe weather, third world political unrest. He always seems to be in the middle of the action, whether there's an election or an elephant stampede. We cut to the Vatican as a pope is chosen. We see the inauguration of President Lockwood, played by George Grizzard. Then we jump to the announcement of a challenger candidate in the next election, former President Mallory, played by Leslie Nielsen. When we see Patrick Hale walk around the newsroom, it very closely resembles the set of Anchorman, and I think that's on purpose. I feel like this inspired the look of the set in Anchorman. We see Patrick Hale report on the Olympics as a runner delivers a torch. The whole montage plays out under the opening credits. It also makes use of a lot of stock footage for the purpose of staying under budget. We see 4 people parachuting from a plane over the fictional nation of Zagreb, North Africa, presumably named after Zagreb in Croatia, but which looks like a Saharan desert, just sand dunes stretching out to the horizon in all directions. We hear the theme from Lawrence of Arabia play out over the locale, and we see a small motorized bike with a bright red wind sail rolling through the desert. Do you guys recall the last time we heard the Lawrence of Arabia theme or a very close sound-alike before? I have a couple examples.
Was it Lawrence of Arabia?
We didn't cover that one.
Oh, did we not? Feels like we would have. Oh, wait.
I think you got one.
The Hollywood Nights?
Yeah.
I was just gonna
Sorry.
I was going to say, hint, the first one had lyrics.
Yeah. I was just getting there in my head.
Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia. He's an English guy. He came to fight the Turkish.
The other one's at the end of the Gong Show movie. As the helicopter capturing the footage gets closer, we can see Sean Connery as Patrick Hale piloting the vehicle. Hale's voiceover tells us about his lifelong friendship with King Awad, who lives here in the desert. Hale says his friend listens to the voices of the desert for advice, and then explains that American engineers basically incepted him with fabricated desert voices to pursue selling his nation's oil. In the helicopter overhead, we see a woman in glasses speaking into a tape recorder who we'll come to know as Sally Blake, played by Katharine Ross. Out of nowhere, another vehicle joins Hale's caravan and seems to attempt to drive him off his path, eventually succeeding in tipping over the desert-sailing craft. Patrick Hale recognizes the car that tipped his vehicle over as King Awad's car. The helicopter getting aerial footage sets down beside them as Hale switches vehicles, and Sally Blake hops in an open-top Jeep with him. She introduces herself as a reporter from the Globe Syndicate. She mentions for our sake that in his past Hale was a professional actor but now works as an anchorman. Presumably Hale already knows this. She seems to be interviewing him for her piece and asks a lot about his love life, as though she were personally curious. In the book, he's married. She asks why King Awad sent for him, and he doesn't know yet. They finally catch up with the car that ran him off his path earlier, and it's being attacked by a whole crowd of Arabs with AK-47s. Looks like they're mad because the car crashed into one of their camels, and when Sally Blake moves up to the window with a camera, the man inside rolls it down to point a gun back at her. This is Helmut Unger, an associate of King Awad's, and they see he's traveling with several large silver suitcases. Blake captures all of it on film for Hale's report. Unger is surprised when she mentions his name, but she points out it's right there on his business card. For some reason, Unger has to inspect a business card to confirm it for himself, but when we see it, the four corners of the card read Tangier, Algiers, Tunis, and something obscured by his fingers, and in the center it says Europa Trading Center, 324750, but no mention of the name Unger unless you take the Un from Tunis and the non-consecutive GERs from either Tangier or Algiers. I think the point is, she knows his name from somewhere else, and she's letting him know that. Hale moves the man's suitcases from the crashed car to the back of his Jeep, and Unger reimburses the camel owners for the damage in cash. Before they all get back in the Jeep, Blake manages to wave a Geiger counter over the suitcases and determines them to be radioactive. She's surprised to learn that King Awad is friends with this man too, since he's known all over the world as a violent terrorist. Strange that he would have so many supposedly civilized friends.
So, I made a note here because they're introducing all this information.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going on yet. So my note is, as Hale drives, Blake asks Unger about Awad meeting Rafeeq.
Yeah.
And I was like,
too many names.
Means anything.
I was like, we've only met 3 of these characters that they're talking about.
Every other word is a name. Pretending to simply make room for himself in the back seat, Unger picks up Hale's camera and sets it deliberately atop his suitcases loaded in the back. Hale asks Unger what his business is here, but it should have been obvious.
Oil?
God bless oil.
Idea. God is oil.
Unger directs them to his personal refinery and presents his ID to get through security. We see Awad's face on billboards all over the property, and the characters being played by actor Ron Moody in Saudi Arabian makeup and garb. After they drop off Unger, Blake tells Hale Unger's backstory, but stops to note that someone seems to be following them. Hale gives Blake a ride to a seemingly random intersection, and she points him in the direction of Homer Hubbard's office at the American Embassy. She warns him the embassy phones are bugged, and before she leaves, he invites her to drinks later, and she accepts, smiling. The car following them parks nearby to keep an eye on Hale. A blonde agent we'll come to know as Erica from IMDb, because it's never mentioned in the film anywhere, steps out of the suspicious vehicle and digs through a trunk full of weapons. She follows Blake on foot to a payphone. Blake reports what sounds like a coded message.
I'm calling for Marcus. This is his cousin. 411-9000.
Those digits seem to be the number for this particular payphone. Erica whispers an unheard message into a walkie-talkie, presumably the same number, so someone else can call the phone pretending to be her contact. But when the phone rings again, Sally introduces herself.
This is your cousin Sally. Yes, urgent. No, now. Same place.
Which seems like it wouldn't be a useful message if she were accidentally delivering it to the wrong team, So I guess this call wasn't an interception, and Erica was just reporting her actions.
Or it was intercepted, but was just being listened to.
And wasn't useful to the other caller. At the American Embassy, we see Hale trying to drive through a dense crowd of angry protesters to meet with Ambassador Homer Hubbard, played by John Saxon. A team of soldiers hold back most of the protesters carrying signs that read, "Stop interference, no Yankee imperialism now, mind your business, leave us alone, Yankees." We cut across town to Sally Blake still running for her life along a derelict stretch of railroad track. Erica, now with a bandana over her hair, is still close behind Sally, but managing to keep out of sight. As Hale walks Hubbard to his Jeep, he shares a coded message.
Give me her exact words.
Quote, Humpty Dumpty's ready to fall. Mike.
They jump in Hale's Jeep to abandon the embassy before the protests evolve into violent riots. Do you guys recall the last time we brought up Humpty Dumpty on the podcast? A father was reciting nursery rhymes to his daughter while she was being molested in the woods.
That feels like I should know that right away. Oh, that Tarzan movie.
Tarzan the Ape Man.
Yeah.
Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall.
Again, the American soldiers are forced to fire their weapons in the air to make a hole big enough in the crowd of protesters for Hale to drive through. When they crowd around the vehicle again, Hubbard does his best to scare them off with maybe tear gas canisters.
Yeah.
And eventually they escape the angry crowd. Blake eventually arrives on foot to a building in a city center, and the woman watching her waits outside to report Sally's location to her own driver, Abu. As she does this, a man in Coke bottle glasses walks past her outside. We see Erica and her driver, Abu, waiting elsewhere in the car, turning dials and pressing buttons on electronics in sync with each other. Inside the building, we see Sally Blake speaking with the man in thick glasses about the dimensions of the presumably nuclear weapons.
3 feet long, 2.5 feet high, 9 to 10 inches thick. Weight about 90 pounds. Highly radioactive.
While they talk, Erica walks past them and drops a bag in the trash can behind Blake. Hale, Hubbard, and Hale's cameraman Mike are just getting up to the building outside when Erica and Abu press buttons again to trigger the trash can bomb and kill Blake and her contact. We get a brutal insert of a charred corpse on the ground where Sally was just speaking with her contact. Digging through the rubble of the explosion later, Hubbard locates Blake's glasses. Almost immediately, Hale is reporting on Sally Blake's assassination by bomb. Pressed for comment, a pair of soldiers outside the building assure Hale the woman was a spy. Later, we see Hubbard being interviewed and claiming she was killed to keep the people responsible out of the news. The president watches the broadcast on television in the Oval wearing a tracksuit on an exercise bike. His chief of staff, Hacker, is played by Dean Stockwell. Hale interviews the gathering protester crowd, and they admit into his microphone that they have nothing against Americans in general, just the Jews and President Lockwood specifically. Hacker tells the president that Jack Philindros called him en route to the White House and recommends scrambling the SecDef and VPOTUS. He also recommends summoning General Wombat, and I was unclear if that is the SecDef or if he's just like the top military brass under SecDef. Hacker also warns the president that former President Mallory is about to release a statement on Sally Blake to the public. The president reminds Hacker that Mallory is completely insane.
Don't they know Mallory's crazy? He was crazy when he was a senator. He was even crazier when he was president. He's crazy enough to be insane.
In the book, it's almost disturbing how closely the character of Mallory lines up with our own current president. The people who like him do for the same reasons, and the people who don't for the same reasons. He was elected for a single term and is mounting a re-election. Were it successful, he would be the first president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms since Grover Cleveland, a distinction also held by our current president. And to achieve his second term, he must defeat, in the film anyway, an old white man with a much younger African-American woman vice president. And events later in the film make the comparison even easier. Here's an excerpt from the book. He's not some survivor of the primaries who has to pussyfoot. He's the maximum leader of a fanatical political party. He's the former president. To a lot of people, he never stopped being the president. That includes a lot of people in the media. He'll be coming back, in a lot of people's minds, to pull Excalibur out of the sacred stone. He also becomes the first ever president not to concede the loss of an election. Right. The first candidate even to not concede an election. We cut to former President Mallory, played by Leslie Nielsen, standing on the hood of an 18-wheeler. He has the support of the Teamsters, and they all honk their truck horns, begging him to return to the White House. He tells the crowd that Sally Blake's ghost wants justice from America, and Lockwood isn't the man to deliver it. Mallory complains about the increasing oil prices and America's failure to act in the interest of its people to bring these costs down.
4 years of Lockwood has changed us from strong to weak, from proud to puny, from fearless to faceless. Is that what you want?
At the end of his speech, the truck starts driving off with him still firmly planted on the hood. It doesn't look unplanned or anything, but a little awkward.
I'm assuming Leslie Nielsen is like strapped
in for sure.
Yeah.
We cut to a private plane in the middle of the desert and a man praying toward Mecca on a nearby prayer blanket. Patrick Hale pulls up beside him and greets his old friend, King Awad, played by Ron Moody himself, who we last saw as Fagin in the '68 Oliver musical. King Awad seems disturbed by the news of Sally Blake's death and shares that his intelligence assures him that she was a spy against his kingdom. Hale warns Awad that his own intelligence might be his enemy. Tomorrow is the day that Awad will officially sign over his oil fields for international trade. The specific date was all laid out in a message from God, which, as we already explained, was actually orchestrated by the U.S. government. Hale's cameraman Mike reminds him they brought a gift for the king, and he hands it off before they part ways. It's a 35mm camera, and when King Awad tries to take a photo of Hale, Hale helpfully removes the lens cap for him. When he presses the button, he reacts to a sharp pain. Lifting his hand, we see his finger bloodied somehow by the button. Hale asks what happened, and King Awad waves him off. No big deal. We cut now to the president and his collected staff in the Situation Room, watching footage of Patrick Hale on 6 televisions. Impossibly, Hale's cameraman can be seen over his shoulder filming the jet as it takes off from the runway. So who's filming this angle? There's only one cameraman here with him.
Yeah.
The closing narration of Hale's report mentions the voices that guide King Awad's decision-making. General Wombat laughs off the man's hallucinated voices, and the president points to Joan of Arc and Moses, and other famous biblical crazy people. What are you talking about? Those people are crazy. They heard voices. But Wombat reminds him that the world's most successful military leaders don't follow disembodied voices to victory. There's not a General Wombat in the book, and the name seems like the most blatant of many cues cribbed from Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, which features characters like Colonel Bat Guano or President Merkin Muffley. Just then, the Associated Press call for the president's comment on a breaking news story, and although he'd rather not bother, Hacker reminds him it's election season. He has to answer. The first question seems to be how he plans to respond to Sally Blake's assassination, and the second is the first word the president is getting that Patrick Hale was kidnapped just after his broadcast ended. Back in Hogreb, Hale is led by Erica, the blonde revolutionary, and her driver Abu over a sand dune to an active battlefield. Back in the Situation Room, the president assures the AP reporter that Sally was not a CIA spy. She was purely a journalist, and her death will be answered for. The president hangs up and then asks Hacker for fast answers on where Patrick Hale has disappeared to. Vice President Ford appears in the doorway and joins the rest of the team. She's quickly brought up to speed. Jack Philindros asks the room what they know about the Eye of Gaza. Apparently, it's a well-known terrorist organization in the Middle East. He plays for them footage of a terrorist training camp in North Africa, and we cut directly to one such obstacle course where Patrick Hale collects footage with his own camera. He determines when one of the soldiers he's following collapses that these exercises are using live ammunition. Erica drags Hale out of the training course and advises him to duck and cover just before an explosion that would have knocked him off his feet. He thanks her for the rescue, and a pair of boots step in front of him. His eyes tilt up to the face of Henry Silva, the leader of this guerrilla army.
The man at the top. His name is Rafeeq. Soldiers are fanatics, ready, willing to die for their cause. Even commit suicide on command, especially on television.
He describes for the president a failed plot of Rafeeq's agents to bomb a passenger plane with plastique surgically embedded in the bomber's thighs. The X-ray image of plastic explosives attached internally to a man's skeleton is reminiscent of the story of the failed underwear bomber, who, like this plastique surgery terrorist, was also caught before he could set off his bomb. His report on the Eye of Gaza ends with the supposedly confirmed intelligence that in approximately 7 hours, Rafeeq will be in possession of 2 suitcase-sized atomic bombs. The president asks if it's possible the report is mistaken, but Jack insists it is accurate and was collected by one of their agents this morning before she died in an explosion, indicating to us that the president was incorrect in asserting to the press that Sally Blake was not a CIA spy.
I'm having such a hard time. Well, I had a hard time watching this movie in general, but even your recounting of it, I don't understand anybody's motivations.
She's a spy. She's a part of the same team that's convincing Awad to start trading oil to America so that they can bring prices down and win the election.
Okay.
But she's posing as a reporter. But when the king finds out that he's being manipulated by people, then he sort of turns on them and decides he's going to make nuclear weapons and sell them to this terrorist group who told him about the betrayal that was going on.
And what does the terrorist group want?
The terrorist group wants to take over the region. They want to be in charge. They want to be deciding things. They hate America.
That's all they want. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. They don't have any specific demands. Like, they just want to get rid of Awad so that they could be there.
Yes.
Okay.
We cut back to the Eye of Gaza camp, where Rafeeq informs Patrick Hale of the same fact. Silva claims Hale could just as easily be a spy as well, but he's still useful to the cause because of the wide reach of his broadcasts. Hale doesn't believe that the warring factions of the Middle East will unite into a cohesive ideology in this part of the world, because King Awad preaches the word of his God, and Rafeeq takes action by means of terrorist attacks. Rafeeq asks Hale to elaborate on how he defines terrorism, and points out with many examples that every major country is equally guilty of terrorism, when you consider their histories from the perspective of the cultures they terrorized. Among his list, he mentions the Japanese in Manchuria, which is funny because one of the earliest titles we've seen from Silva was his part in the Manchurian Candidate. When his samples reach the Middle East, he talks about Hitler's terrorism against the Jews and the Jews' subsequent terrorism against the Eye of Gaza collective. With regard to America, he points to the bombing of Japan as obvious terrorist action. Jack Philindros presents a digital slideshow to illustrate the payload of the alleged nuclear bomb suitcases. He says that each briefcase alone is capable of explosion
with a destructive force, Mr. President, greater than the Hiroshima bomb.
Jack suspects aloud that Rafeeq's first targets will be Tel Aviv or Jerusalem and Israel. General Wombat advises the president to simply press the launch button, and within 30 minutes Rafeeq will be a smoking crater in the desert, but Jack warns that if there's a dead man switch in play, a preemptive strike will not prevent a disaster. Back at the Eye of Gaza camp, Rafeeq shows off a rocket that can accurately trail something as small as an RC plane, or say a drone, with deadly accuracy. To achieve the effect, it seems all they did was string a toy rocket to an RC plane.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's being chased through the sky by something that's actually dragging along behind it.
Very effective.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that trick where you just kind of tie a string with a snake on it to somebody, and then as they
Someone
run
who's
away,
golfing.
it chases them.
Eventually, the rocket catches up with the plane and explodes in the sky, and the soldiers below fire their weapons in the air in celebration.
This never comes back, right? I'm not crazy.
This particular
yeah.
military technology? No, not really.
Because I was like, okay, well, they're setting up that this missile, this is like a thing that's going to happen later.
Yeah, I think they're just showing off what they can do with the access to new kinds of weapons Unger is bringing for them.
But such a specific demonstration was like Chekhov's gun.
It does seem like we're going to shoot a plane down with this eventually. They announce a plan to attack Israel tomorrow and America soon after. Philindros tells the president that he believes the threat is against New York, and General Wombat again advises the president to press the button to launch a nuke and end the revolution instantly. Still seeking alternatives, the president suggests freezing the funds of the hostile government of Maghreb, but he's informed by Philindros that all the nation's money has been discreetly transferred to neutral countries, and it is no longer freezable. The president suggests announcing it on a national broadcast, and his team assure him it will be spun as an excuse to derail the upcoming presidential election. Lockwood makes it clear he won't accept a legacy as the president who started World War III, and Philindros asks to discuss a final option in private. Rafeeq puts Patrick Hale in a Jeep with Erica and advises her to see that Hale gets home safe with his camera, to share the footage of their training camp and supposedly advanced military technology. That night, we see Unger driving down the road with both silver suitcases in his back seat. A car pulls up to pass him on the left, and Unger rolls up his bulletproof windows, predicting the attack. The men open fire on Unger's car, but the windows are impenetrable. Unger maintains his composure, and when they stop to reload, he nonchalantly tosses grenades out the window at the other car. The first two explosions are near misses, but the would-be assassins dive out of their vehicle just before a third grenade explodes, dealing their car a direct hit. Do you guys recall the last time we saw one car disable another car with a hand grenade?
Yes.
Was it Death Race 2000?
Literal hand grenade in Death Race 2000. A van behind the explosions on the road radios an S-191 to the White House. In the White House, we see Homer Hubbard receiving the message and inputting it into his computer, that the nukes were not retrieved in this attempt. Then we see terrestrial satellites and satellites in orbit beaming messages all around the globe. Operation Suitcase results negative. Back in the Oval Office, they get a phone call informing Philindros that the suitcase mission failed and that someone has allegedly committed suicide. The president asks if King Awad killed himself because that would be super convenient for them, and Philindros asks the president if he's giving some kind of coded order or if he's just thinking out loud. As President Lockwood settles into the idea, he decides to commit to it, but avoids directly ordering the assassination by leaning on metaphors.
Well, Jackie?
Yes, sir?
Uncork your touchdown play and score.
Mr. President.
Blast them out of the ballpark.
I'm not too familiar with football.
Score, Jackie, score.
What you're really saying is...
Right, go ahead.
Go where?
Damn it, man, do it.
Do what, sir?
You want me to spell it out?
Yes, sir, I do. I have seen the CIA take the rap for the last 7 presidents, but no more. Unless you give me a direct order.
You want me to say kill him?
That is one of your options, sir.
Why, even if I thought such a terrible thing, which I never did, do you realize I could be impeached?
Politics don't mean anything to me, unless they affect the CIA and the United States.
In that order, Jackie?
They're interchangeable, Mr. President.
Those eyeglasses, they wouldn't be a tape recorder like the one Sally Blake.
To prove his glasses are just glasses, Philindros walks to the Resolute desk and smashes them with a signed baseball. The president brings up the famous and likely apocryphal example of King Henry II, who, in a dispute with Archbishop of Canterbury Thomas Becket, allegedly ordered his assassination as non-committally as possible.
He didn't say, pop him, burn him. He said what?
Who will rid me of this man?
My memory of this quote has always ended, "Who will rid me of this troublesome priest?" though elsewhere online I've found it ending with meddlesome priest or turbulent priest. And I could have sworn the story comes up in an episode of Aaron Sorkin's The West Wing, by which I mean somewhere in the first 4 seasons, but according to westwingtranscripts.com, which helpfully features a fully searchable transcript of the entire series, I am mistaken. Though there's definitely a mid-series episode where President Bartlett orders the assassination of Kumari Defense Minister Abdul Ibn Sharif, and ultimately accepts a censure from Congress as penance when his orders are made public. And in retaliation for Sharif's death, Bartlett's daughter is abducted by the Baji terrorist network. Such a great show if you haven't caught it. Kind of depressing to watch now, though. Philindros stands his ground and refuses to paraphrase the president's roundabout orders.
And you still don't understand?
No, sir.
Well, how's this? K-I-double-L him. By God.
By God, sir?
By executive action.
Immediately. Thank you, sir.
I like that he was like, even kill him by God could mean like, let him die by natural causes. After Philindros leaves, the president asks Hacker if the Oval Office microphones recorded this conversation, and then asks that those tapes be burned to destroy all evidence of his order.
Your own tape?
Burn it. Watergate, remember? You think I want a black Ford in my future?
Presumably referring to his own African-American vice president, actually named Ford, as the Gerald Ford to Lockwood's Richard Nixon. In a car, on his way off the property, we see Philindros remove a button from his coat and pop open his watch face like a tiny Discman to play the button as a recording. We hear the president repeat his explicit K-I-double-L order. We cut to Homer Hubbard's office, where he tucks a big tape of reels and a massive stack of papers into a box in the wall, and then types in a destruct command on a connected computer. He pulls open a desk with an audio cassette inside, and wraps it in a Kleenex to delicately transport it to his coat pocket. A few seconds later, the computer reports the destruction is complete, and when he reopens the box, smoke billows out of the mostly empty chamber. We cut back to Hale and Erica in the Jeep at night, and he asks what's so important about tomorrow for Awad. She doesn't have an answer, nor can she explain why she, an American by nationality, would sign up to fight alongside Rafeeq in this desert. As half explanation, she asks why troops fought in Vietnam, but unless she understands why they did, the point seems to undermine her involvement here. Translating the Farsi voice on the radio, she informs Hale they've just announced King Awad has died. Hale decides to head to Awad's camp to learn what's happened.
I feel like he wouldn't be welcome.
Yeah, well, she says that too. She's like, you might not be invited when we get there, but they do let him in. When he gets there, he finds troops running in all directions. He learns from Awad's inner circle that Awad has committed suicide with poison. He left behind a suicide note on tape.
Let fire rain from the sky. Let blood run in the streets. Death to the enemy. The voices made me unclean. My own blood, shed by my own hand. Only that can make me clean again.
In the book, he writes it out as a letter, and he orders his son to kill him, and then his son adds at the bottom of the message that he's going to kill himself after.
But that would imply that he actually intended to kill himself.
But then Hale knows that he can't read or write, so he didn't write this note.
Oh.
It's different. The book is actually worse than the movie. Rafeeq, speaking directly into Hale's camera, insists this was clearly a murder and the tape is a fabrication. He blames the CIA specifically, and Hale asks how the CIA was able to reach the reclusive king in the desert, but Rafeeq hasn't solved that mystery. Unger hops into his car, and Rafeeq stops him, demanding the suitcases he was promised. Unger reminds him he's owed $1 million by the dead king, and not everybody gets what they want.
No cash, no business.
You'll get your money.
That's when you'll get the merchandise.
We get another long split-screen montage of fights breaking out all over the region, and Patrick Hale getting as much of it on camera as he can. We cut to the Oval Office, where Hacker enters to point out a newspaper headline announcing King Awad's suicide.
We lucked out.
Purely for the sake of the Oval Office recording equipment, on which the president must sound informed but uninvolved. Patrick Hale's broadcast informs us that the riot montage we've just seen took place over the course of 30 hours, and now we see the remains of Sally Blake being loaded onto a plane under an American flag to be flown back to the U.S. Patrick Hale, too, returns to America, and a helicopter deposits him on the rooftop helipad of his news network overlords.
So they're all being evacuated, essentially.
Right.
They were willing to let television journalists stay, but all written journalists had to leave the country.
Right.
And television journalists left in solidarity.
Right. Hale is interviewed by another journalist on his way inside whether he believes there's any truth to Rafeeq's claims that Awad was murdered, and Hale's producer Harvey would rather he didn't answer.
You question suicide!
Yes. No comment!
While they argue, we see a man in the background suddenly prying open a phone, presumably to plant some kind of recording device. Harvey urges Hale to consider a vacation before his wild accusations land the network in hot water. A woman reporter steps into Hale's office to wait for him, and when he joins her, she points out wordlessly that his office is bugged and they can't speak freely here. Even her right earring is a microphone, so Hale covers it with one hand to whisper in the opposite ear.
I don't think she is a reporter.
She's not?
No, I believe she is a prostitute.
Oh, okay.
And she gets her information from the brothel that she works at.
Oh, okay.
And that's
because he says something about, oh, she's a new reporter that's going to be working here or something like that. That was just his cover story for her. Okay, I missed that. She claims she was informed by an FBI agent turned private investigator. On his secretary's phone, Hale verifies with the phone company that the technician that just left their office wasn't one of theirs. The phone in his office rings again, and when the same woman who just warned him tries to answer it, he yanks the phone away and throws it across the room before it explodes. This leads right to Hale's next broadcast on the growing trend of attacking reporters just trying to inform the public of what's happening in the world. Again, he piles his doubts on the official ruling that Awad killed himself, since as a man of God, he would never submit himself to that sin. Hale lists everyone he reached out to for confirmation, and experts seem to agree the recording is authentic and Awad clearly killed himself. Hale meets with former President Mallory and asks the obvious cui bono, who benefits most. Mallory doesn't hesitate to accuse President Lockwood of ordering the hit and invites Hale to report his claim. Taking it a step further, he plays a new recording for Hale.
Oh, I heard that before.
Not this one.
I heard voices.
We put this together with our computer using his old radio speeches. They're both lies. A fake suicide to cover up murder.
Mallory flicks on a slideshow, and the first picture is of Unger, a man selling suitcases to Rafeeq's army on Awad's orders for $1 million each. He says Sally was CIA working for Homer Hubbard. Hale wonders what the suitcases could possibly contain to be worth the price, but Mallory doesn't offer any further info. Sometime later, we see Hale on the city streets, stopping to sign autographs for fans when a revolutionary protester jumps off a bridge overhead and pinches his wristwatch to activate a suicide bomb, exploding in a splash of sparks in midair. Hale rushes back to the newsroom to order a copy of the footage Sally Blake got of Mr. Unger's desert car accident 3 days ago. When he finally gets the tape on screen, it's been badly damaged.
Sure it didn't pass through an x-ray?
Run it again.
Hale has a flashback of the desert drive and recalls Unger placing the camera on top of his suitcases. He seems already to have concluded that the suitcases destroyed the tape with radiation.
So this is where where I was talking about how the movie kind of flip-flops between wanting to be satirical.
Right.
Like, you got this crazy president doing all these kind of things, but
then there's serious spy moments like this.
Yeah. This is if this were a serious film, this would have been a great revelation.
Yeah.
It's like, oh crap, the radiation destroyed the footage. There was something.
And that's also him learning that the boxes were radioactive to begin with.
Yeah, because
he was like, we didn't go through an X-ray. I got right on a plane in the desert, so this is something that happened out in the desert. His next stop is the CIA, where he demands to speak with Homer Hubbard, and when he's given the runaround, he mentions his awareness of the suitcases before leaving. Hale gets a similar smokescreen at the White House, where the Chief of Staff Hacker does his best to keep the reporter out of President Lockwood's hair.
He instructed me to say, quote, Pat is my friend. Give him anything he wants.
10 minutes.
Anything except that.
5 minutes now.
No can do.
Hale mentions Mallory's accusation and threatens to go public with it if he's not allowed access to the president. Hubbard, from the CIA, reaches out and invites Hale for a chat. He teaches him for somehow the first time what plausible deniability means. It's like, you're a reporter for the news. You don't know what plausible deniability means?
Who takes the rap?
Whoever did what the president said he didn't do, but did.
Are you saying President Lockwood did?
Did what?
What he didn't do.
The men move together to Philindros' office, where he's administering a drug to a rat in a cage. It dies instantly, and Hubbard assures him an autopsy would suggest a heart attack, a new assassination drug at work. Philindros asks Hale if he can keep a secret, and when Hale blatantly says no, Philindros doesn't care and hits play on his personal recording of the president's order. Somehow, the president learns what Hale knows, and we cut right to Hale finally being invited to speak with the president. All he asks is the truth.
Well, I don't know where to begin.
How about Kill him?
We jump forward to the president having told Hale everything, but forbidding him from sharing the information with the public because it's classified.
Who classified it?
I did.
When?
Just now. That, my friend, is executive privilege.
We jump to the Oval hours later as Lockwood prepares to give an address to the nation. He starts by cuddling his pet dog, Scruffy.
Man's best friend. Yeah, but tomorrow he may be the only friend I've got. Did you ever realize that dog spelled backwards is God?
He opens the floor to questions from the press, and the camera jumps back to the Middle East, where Unger fires an automatic weapon at a table covered in books, which explode into shreds of paper in the air. This is a sales pitch, and he rattles off the specs of a weapon to Rafeeq and Abu. In the background, we see crates of these weapons being unloaded from a cargo plane, and Erica keeps a tight inventory of the product. Unger reminds Rafeeq that his nuke cases are still available for purchase, but Rafeeq explains that with Awad dead, he rules the nation and will profit from the oil sale. He has no need to terrorize anyone now that his personal needs are met. On Hale's next broadcast, he presents a recording of the president's words in the Oval. The president claims responsibility for Awad's assassination, and Mallory sees the broadcast as a sign of his inevitable victory in the election. In the president's defense, Hale reports that Awad developed a pair of nuclear suitcases and was prepared to sell them to Rafeeq's faction, the Eye of Gaza, in response to the presence of CIA spies operating in his orbit. Rafeeq watches the broadcast accusing him of plans to attack Israel and America, and he's furious to see his comfortable oil baron future fading away into the distance, even though that was his plan, was to blow up one of them in Israel and one of them in America. He claims that without the bombs, they can't prove he was prepared to use them, but then, counterintuitively, he orders that people procure said bombs however possible. So he's like, I don't even have the bombs. Somebody get the bombs.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you don't want them, but if you have them, you can prevent them from existing as far as the rest of the world knows.
Yeah, because now if someone detonates them, he'll be blamed.
Right. Hale interviews Vice President Ford, who seems to judge the president for his actions, but admits that she would have done the same thing in the same situation. The Vatican is against it, American televangelists are for it, and of course General Wombat offers his support.
The U.S. of A. may not always be right, but God knows we're never wrong.
We get a montage of man-on-the-street interviews with people echoing the film's title by deeming the president's actions right or wrong back and forth. Approached for comment, Mallory points out that we must take the president's word that Rafeeq is in possession of weapons of mass destruction since no concrete evidence has been presented to that effect. Later, at a Mallory rally, the candidate dons a cowboy hat and celebrates his certain victory with a fireworks show. He unveils an old Wild West-style poster bearing President Lockwood's face, wanted for murder. Lockwood's polling tanks overnight, and Mallory is set for a landslide. Lockwood supposes his only chance of weathering this storm is by acquiring the very proof that Mallory has asserted doesn't exist to justify his orders. Erica and Abu arrive to Unger's weapons warehouse, following his orders to acquire the suitcases. After Unger walks them around the building, a call comes in from Philindros hoping to purchase the same suitcases on the president's behalf. Philindros records his half of the chat for safety's sake.
We're ready to buy. $2 million, right?
Not now.
2,100,000. 2,000,002.
The one-man bidding is interrupted by the sound of a weapons exhibition. A warehouse employee shows the revolutionaries a handgun with exploding bullets. When Unger turns back to the call, he seems to agree to a price of $2.5 million in Swiss francs. Philindros says Hubbard is on his way now. Erica and Abu try to play hardball by suggesting that, since they don't even intend to use the bombs, they shouldn't have to pay full price, and Unger happily walks them back to the door and out of his warehouse. Just then, a third call comes in, this time from Mallory, curious about the same $2 million suitcases.
What? Did you say $3 million? Hey, boy, that's cheap. We're in business.
Mallory says his man, John Brown, will make the handoff, and when we see Brown, it's the same man who planted a bomb in Hale's office phone earlier. We see Hale packing to leave his office and explaining the point of the 3 previous scenes to his producer Harvey.
The suitcases are the key. Lockwood needs the bombs to prove justifiable homicide. Rafeeq needs them to prove there were no bombs, and Mallory needs them to win the election. And we need them for an exclusive story.
Hale intends to fly to Paris today and make an offer for the suitcases himself, but Harvey is disgusted to hear a reporter suggest paying money for a story.
But that's checkbook journalism! What kind of journalism was it when television paid $500,000 for an exclusive on the Bay of Pigs? $1 million to Nixon to apologize coast to coast?
CBS paid Haldeman, Eisenhower, and Johnson. NBC paid John Dean and Robert Kennedy's assassin. ABC paid Lieutenant Calley. And for breakfast served up the My Lai massacre.
He reminds Harvey that he himself offered a $100,000 check to a convicted murderer to air the man's execution on primetime television.
What good is it paying somebody who's being executed?
Your family. Take care of them.
We're in show business, baby. Make 'em laugh, make 'em cry, make 'em buy and buy.
I enjoyed the little detail here that outside his office, Hale has a framed front page headline, "Does Patrick Hale take sex pills?" I just feel like he just saw that and he was like, that's funny. Put that on the wall outside my office.
And get me more sex pills.
Yes. Stat.
Go down to the gas station and give me those
Get me more of those tiger pills or whatever the fuck. Ground up tiger butt. On his way out of the office, Hale explains that revealing the president's actions was in accordance with his job, and so is clearing the president's name if that's the truth of the matter. Harvey admits he's a Mallory man.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I really think Sean Connery wanted this to be his network moment.
Yeah.
Like, he's talking about, like, it's not news, it's entertainment.
Right.
Like, you know.
It's okay if you call it that.
Yeah.
We're in the entertainment business, and there's nothing wrong with that, if you call it that.
He's trying to make some very clear points, which again does not jive with the satirical nature of this film.
Yeah.
He should be unaware of that. He
Yeah.
should be more interested in getting the story.
And as much as I feel like Dr. Strangelove is a bunch of caricatures of people in a clearly like nuclear satirical story, there are people you can identify with. You're listening to Buck Turgison and you're like, I know what's going on. I know what you're saying we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or I understand why Merkin Muffley is like freaking out when he's on the phone with the Russians. But in this movie, I can't identify with anybody.
Yeah.
Because I kind of don't care about any of these people. They're all awful in different scenes for different reasons. And none of them feels like a real person. We cut to a French airport as two bagmen, Brown and Hubbard, and the arms dealer Unger arrive in the country simultaneously. Brown ducks into a bathroom and swaps briefcases with the man in the neighboring stall to acquire a case with a large handgun and ammo, presumably that exploding ammo we saw earlier in Unger's warehouse. We cut back to the warehouse where we see Erica unloading more of the exploding ammo into a bunch of empty suitcases in frustration. It seems that after Unger walked them out, they came back and killed the whole warehouse staff, but haven't been able to locate the actual nukes after scouring the building. Erica and Abu step into Unger's office, where Erica starts cracking a safe in the corner, while Abu uses a syringe to fill a hanging light bulb with nitric acid. Inside the safe, she finds only documents, no suitcases, and a small key. Abu screws the light bulb full of nitric acid back into its socket.
I think when he's putting the syringe, he's got two chemicals and he's mixing them together, and because I believe he's making nitroglycerin.
Oh, okay.
And nitric acid is one of the components.
Okay, I just saw the one, but that makes sense. When suddenly, someone's ringing the doorbell outside. Abu moves to answer, and John Brown walks in, expecting to find Mr. Unger. Abu pretends to work here and says Unger isn't available, as Brown pries his own briefcase open, pretending to withdraw the money. And we cut away to Hale arriving at the same French airport. So what we're supposed to assume just happened is that John Brown lied that he was about to get his money out, took out a gun, and killed them.
Right.
Then we cut back to the warehouse hours later for a POV shot inside the darkened building as Hale rings the same doorbell. When his rings go unanswered, he pushes open the door and moves inside on his own. We cut to a night vision scope POV following Hale through the dark building, keeping him in the crosshairs. I can't tell if it's intentional, but obviously anytime we're looking down at a gun barrel at Sean Connery, it feels like a James Bond reference. Hale collects a lit candle from a small shrine and, turning around, spots the weapon that followed him down the hall, and even now it follows him, unmanned. Before he can escape it, he's tackled by a large man.
I feel like there was a scene missing where it was established that gun tracks heat.
Yeah.
And that's why it was
That should have been one of the presentations that they did earlier.
Yeah, because I was like, one, it's odd that he's taking... Well, first, it's very odd that there's like a Catholic Church candle display, like that you light with all the like lighters and everything. I don't get what this is here for.
Yeah.
But the fact that his chosen light source is a small votive candle,
right? Yeah.
To carry with him is like what possible
this isn't gonna
light
help a lot.
that can that provide.
He wrestles the figure panicked for a moment until he realizes this is the corpse of Mallory's bagman, John Brown. Brown had been dangling on a hook when Hale collided with his body in the dark. He holds the candle to the man's face, and we get a fleeting glimpse of an ice pick protruding from the man's left eye. Hale spots Unger's office down the hall, and just as he steps toward it, he has a gun in his back. He spins around into the blinding beam of a flashlight, and a voice offers hushed instructions.
Turn around. Walk.
Together they push into Unger's office, but Hale is warned not to touch anything for fear of booby traps. We can still see the corpse of several of Unger's staff strewn about the room. The voice coaches Hale into the chair behind the desk, and finally the gunman reveals himself as Homer Hubbard. Hale is relieved. Hubbard denies having killed any of the bodies here, insisting it's not his style, and Hale asks how Hubbard prefers to kill people.
Awad's camp's a fortress, but you got in and out. How?
Here, Hubbard drops the truth bomb that Hale himself assassinated King Awad unknowingly.
You brought the king a birthday gift. A camera at the airport. The day he died.
I bought that camera myself.
It wasn't the one he got. He took a picture of you. Tiny needle. Tiny puncture. Hardly felt. 7 hours later, dead.
I was sure at this point that he was going to use this against him, like blackmail. It's just like, oh, I have evidence that you, in fact, killed him.
Yeah.
So now you have to go on air and say to the American people anything I want you to say.
Right.
But that
it's
doesn't
like,
happen.
Isn't there literally footage of you handing him the camera in your broadcast?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm like, what's the point of having him be the guy that did that?
Other than to implicate him?
Yeah.
I guess the only reason would be that he's the only person that can get that close to King Awad. Yeah.
I guess.
But someone else got a hold of that camera and says, oh, the king's not going to need this camera anymore.
Yeah.
And you're just going to have like this repeated constant like death of people trying to take pictures.
Yeah, that's true. Everybody else who tries to take the pictures later. It's like say cheese and die, basically.
I was just thinking that same thing.
It turns out Hale's cameraman Mike was a CIA agent and swapped out the camera on the way to Awad. Hale is quick to work out that Awad was technically assassinated in advance of Lockwood's order.
I don't believe this. You'd say anything for the CIA.
Anything. Even the truth.
By now, Erica and Abu have traced the key to a wall of lockers back at the airport, and inside locker 1005 they find only a Bible. Abu slams the locker in frustration, but Erica opens the Bible. Flipping through the pages, a pair of luggage claim tickets fall out, and when they claim the luggage, they get a clear reading on their Geiger counter. Back at the warehouse, Unger returns to the pitch-black building with a team of soldiers with guns drawn. He orders one to phone the police and the other to shoot anything that moves. Upstairs, we see Hale and Hubbard are still here, hiding in the dark. Instead of actually phoning anyone, the first henchman simply pulls a fire alarm, which weirdly doesn't make a sound to alert anyone in the building. When John Brown's body tips out into the hall from between two boxes, the second henchman and Unger both manage to shoot him before he hits the ground. Unger sees the corpse, and the ice pick is now missing from Brown's eye socket. Unger moves to check his office. Opening the safe, he's disturbed to find the key is missing. He pulls the hanging light in his office closer to illuminate the safe and then laughs at himself. At first, it looks like he's noticed the bulb is black and full of acid, but it turns out he's laughing because he forgot to turn it on before he pulled it close. He tugs on the chain and the light bulb explodes in a fireball that fills the entire office and coats Unger in flames. The man stumbles out of the office into the hall for a long, slow-motion body burn that takes little care to hide the terrible rubber mask of the flaming stuntman.
Yeah.
Hale and Hubbard come down the stairs, attempting to save Unger from the flames, but they're too late. The police can be heard arriving outside as the growing fire consumes the rest of the warehouse. If I'm these guys, I'm getting the fuck out of here, because this is now a burning building full of guns and bombs. Also, no idea where Unger's henchmen disappeared to. Like, they're still here and they're supposed to shoot anything that moves, and you guys are just walking around the place.
Lighting it on fire.
Yeah.
This is like a great place to insert the Leslie Nielsen fireworks factory explosion.
Right, yeah.
Please disperse, nothing to see here.
Out at the docks, we see Erica and Abu loading the hot suitcases onto a boat named Hagreb 2. We see a TV broadcast where reporters criticize Rafeeq for again raising the cost of oil to $22 a barrel. He vaguely promises to reverse course if President Lockwood agrees to resign for his crimes. As the economy struggles, Lockwood's polling numbers continue tumbling. Mallory takes to the airwaves to echo Rafeeq's call for the unpopular president's resignation. Watching the broadcast in a closed campaign office, Lockwood is furious and orders his team to take decisive action now. VP Ford translates the president's order into a compilation of a list of enemies.
Of course. Now let's cut the crap. We want a hit list. Congressmen, senators, cabinets, big business, big labor, big lobbies, yesterday's pals, the cowards trying to give us the shaft. Am I talking too fast for those hidden microphones? Getting all this down on tape? Because here it comes, baby, loud and clear. We want pictures, witnesses, hard evidence.
Kickbacks, bribery, usury, adultery, lechery, bigotry, larceny.
Every dirty deal they ever made, and if you can't or won't get the facts, he will.
Can do.
They want a dirty alley fight.
They've got it.
We cut now to the Alamo, where President Lockwood is making a campaign speech to an excited crowd, many of whom are waving Confederate flags, as one does at the Alamo. Erica sits in a van at the curb outside and tells her passenger that whatever he's about to do needs to happen on camera or it doesn't count. Lockwood compares his odds in the upcoming election to the odds of those brave heroes pinned down at the Alamo.
4,000 enemy troops against 150 Texans. Did they quit? Did a Texan ever quit?
Apparently forgetting that the Texians lost the Battle of the Alamo handily. They didn't quit, per se. They just eventually stopped breathing. Lockwood ends his speech with the requisite "Remember the Alamo," and Erica responds through the speakers of her van.
Remember even Awad. Remember even Awad.
Her passenger bursts forward from the crowd and leaps from a car hood, pinching his wristwatch again to trigger another harmless mid-air explosion. Hale manages to point a camera in the right direction before the bomb goes off, and Lockwood is tackled to the ground by the Secret Service while flaming debris flies past him. And this is like kind of a crazy stunt. I don't think this was supposed to happen this way, because flames are going right past the actor's face. Yeah. An FBI agent jogs alongside Erica's van, fleeing the scene, and when he tells her to pull over, she withdraws an ice pick to reach out the driver's side window and bury it in the man's neck before he collapses to the ground. Now, this can't be the same ice pick, right?
No, but the other ice pick
Sean Connery saw it in the eyeball,
and
then it wasn't there later, but we never explain where that one went. Bizarrely, we even see Hale tackle and subdue the bomber, who wasn't even mortally wounded by his own suicide bomb. In Hale's broadcast that night, somehow, the film's camera angles on all this action are screened as though Hale's team had captured all the same angles, including, like, from in front of the van driving away.
Right. Yeah, that was the most egregious.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, come on.
We get a quick comment from General Wombat again, suggesting the strongest possible military response to end these attacks for good.
When the rats take over, call the exterminator and blast off. We have the men and the means to get the job done. Turn us loose, Mr. President. And we'll blow them all to hell and gone.
As the broadcast ends, Harvey congratulates Hale on his new record ratings, making no apologies for his appreciation of all the viewers lured in by suicide bombers. That afternoon, General Wombat rides past the Statue of Liberty in a helicopter to meet with the president. He's brought with him 2 Secret Service agents dressed in Saudi Arabian costumes to infiltrate the president's audience in search of potential bombers. The president points out that all the bombings have scared people away, so there won't be a crowd to search for suspects. Hale reports from a crowded Times Square about all the people who've shown up in the hopes of seeing a suicide bomber exploding on the world's stage. Erica watches the broadcast on a television and even looks down at Hale out her Times Square apartment window. A crowd of protesters chanting "Death to America" prompt Hale to scoop up a camera and keep an eye on their actions. They crowd around him and scream angrily into his camera. New Yorkers push back against the angry protesters, and the NYPD move in to break up the conflict, at which point Erica orders today's bomber to climb onto a taxi roof and set herself off. On Hale's show that night, the president begs an end to the protests so the details of the disagreement can be argued on the World Court of the UN. Rafeeq says the UN are not necessary to settle this, and a decision will be made tonight in Washington. That night, Hale stands in thick fog outside the White House waiting for some kind of update. He receives word in his earpiece that a police helicopter has been stolen, and then he spots it now, hovering over the Capitol building. 3 of Rafeeq's protesters jump out of it and parachute toward the dome of the Capitol building before triggering their explosives to illuminate the building in the night with their suicide bombs.
Isn't the area around the White House, like, you can't
highly protected
fly
airspace?
Anywhere close?
It would be missiled out of the sky for sure, even in 82.
Yeah.
Hale sits down in shock and then touches his earpiece with another update.
We've just heard similar demonstrations in Chicago, Detroit.
The last of the 3 Capitol building bombers is Erica, and before she can even trigger her bomb, she's shot to death by a military helicopter, but explodes anyway. After she explodes, they turn the guns on the hijacked helicopter and blast it out of the sky. Rafeeq phones Hale's news van directly and demands to speak with him on the air. He reads a list of demands.
1. Lockwood will appear at the United Nations. He will resign as president. 2. The International Court of Justice will try Lockwood for the murder of Ibn Awad. 3. The trial must be shown on television. If Lockwood has not resigned by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, 2 atom bombs will destroy the city and people of New York.
A readout on screen informs us they now have exactly 10 hours starting now, which seems like ample time to organize the evacuation of the city. But Later we'll learn that's apparently not the case.
They have a whole book that tells us that's not the case.
2 FBI agents walk into the newsroom waving their badges around and ordering the network's copy of Rafeeq's demands. Hale seems to agree they cannot be broadcast or made public.
You expect me to kill this story?
For now.
It could mean an Emmy Award, ratings, numbers.
You can't use the story.
The people have a right to know.
Harvey continues to argue his point until the president leans into frame over Patrick's shoulder and thanks Harvey for his willing cooperation with the order. In his war room, Lockwood considers complying with the demands, but General Wombat assures him the recording and the bombs are fake and there's nothing to fear. Philindros counters that he knows everything about the bombs and can confirm without a doubt that they exist and are in Rafeeq's possession now.
But is he crazy enough to use them?
They analyze the man's life psychologically and determine that he's definitely capable of carrying out his threat. Mallory calls the president directly, looking to confirm the rumors of a bomb in New York.
Well, don't say yes and don't say no. Don't say maybe. Say you'll call back, but don't. That's how you stay president.
On his way out of the room, the president asks the small gathering of people in the know to resist the urge to reach out to family in New York and warn them to leave in advance. They don't want the city in a full-blown panic. But of course, the moment he's gone, they all hop on their phones immediately, even the president in the next room. When they all reconvene, the president decides it's time to break out the nuclear football.
Who's got the combination?
You, sir.
Oh.
That won't stop him.
Hale points out that Rafeeq likely placed the bombs and started their timer before even making the threat. The president shouts at everyone he can to find these suitcases before the clock runs out.
There's a quick little throwaway line, but I thought it was really funny. It's like the Secretary of State's on the phone. Where is he? China. Hang up.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk to this guy right now.
Yeah, it's like, no, right now.
The president wants to begin an evacuation, but Hale claims that the available reports on a full evac suggest that evacuating 2 million people could take as long as 4 days, time they obviously don't have. Coming to terms with the imminent danger, the president asks what kind of damage they can expect if the bombs are not stopped in time, but nobody answers until Hale stands to read in the report.
The first shock, blast, and thermal dose will kill at least 2 million people. All this glass will become bullets. Billions of them. They'll slash everything for miles. There'll be fires, tens of thousands. Winds. Winds double the force, the destructive force of hurricanes. All the water. All the food. Poisoned. And within 10 days, all the rest of the people dead. Radiation. Even the ones in the shelters.
It's starting to sound a lot like the 7 bowls of the apocalypse from Image of the Beast. And then 1/3 of the water will become blood. What the fuck? That's a nuclear thing?
Mr. President, if these bombs are allowed to go off.
A flash of white fills the room, and we see a montage of a nuclear attack on New York, signifying to us that the bombs have gone off more than 6 hours early. But with each new angle on the destruction, the explosions seem more and more obviously simulated in miniature. And eventually we reveal what we've just seen was the destruction of a scale model constructed entirely within the war room, purely to illustrate the predicted extent of the damage for the president.
It's only a model.
Exactly. Staring down at the model, the president concludes he must resign, and almost everyone tries to talk him out of it, even his presumptive replacement.
If you resign, a woman, a black woman, will be in the White House, and she won't be serving dinner.
Congratulations, Madam President.
If I'm not shot before I'm sworn in.
On a helicopter flight to wherever the president intends to announce his resignation, Philindros happens to spot a pair of silver suitcases hung from a flagpole atop the World Trade Center.
That's a well-hung flagpole.
Thank God. Call the FBI.
Is it not just as effective to tuck them into like a little corner of like the roof
Yeah, did you
area?
want someone to see them?
Well, I mean, yes.
Well, yes.
But I mean, if I were Rafeeq, I wouldn't want someone to see these.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so there's no reason they would be out in the open.
Right.
Where literally millions of people can spot them from any second.
Right. Yes. But they did want them seen.
Yeah. They touch down on the roof and lower the suitcases for the bomb squad to defuse. When a man in full defusal gear prepares to clip a wire, his hands shake terribly, and the unarmored Philindros offers to defuse the bomb himself. The man hands over the wire cutters, and after a couple snips, the bomb is dead. Hale is impressed with how conveniently they managed to solve this whole problem seconds before the time ran out, and that Philindros happened to guess the proper defusal method.
Convenient.
Oh, I'd say lucky.
I thought for a while the CIA had arranged the suitcases. Like King Awad's suicide.
Mr. Hale, we only try to do what's right.
Even when it's wrong.
If it's good for America, it can't be wrong. Right?
What's next?
War!
We cut to the president speaking passionately into camera from the Oval Office. He lifts the 2 nuke cases onto the Resolute desk and informs the American people that Rafeeq's kingdom of Hagreb will answer for their terroristic threats against the American people. We see a montage of America bombing Hagreb to pieces, and when we cut there, we see a very confused Rafeeq in his underground bunker with the actual nuclear suitcases still in his possession.
What war? What bombs? What the hell? Is he crazy?
The shock and awe above ground eventually take out the electricity and strand Rafeeq in darkness, not unlike how Saddam Hussein found himself hiding deep in a bunker after the US's extensive bombing of Iraq in the wake of the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center, with which Hussein was wholly uninvolved. The American people don't even wait for a victory to celebrate, taking to the streets with confetti and streamers under headlines like "War at Last" or "President Assured Re-Election." We see a phone call with Mallory congratulating Lockwood on his re-election and war efforts.
You hit him! Hit him with everything you got! But for God's sake, don't hit those oil wells!
We cut to a plane flying over Hagreb. The last 2 men to parachute from the plane are General Wombat and Patrick Hale. Wombat reminds Hale to get everything he can on camera where it counts, and Hale reminds him to pause for a 3-minute commercial break before taking control of the oil wells. Hale glances quickly into camera and then rips the toupee off his head before donning a helmet to jump out. We cut from the jump back to the control room at Hale's offices of the World Television Network, and the credits play out over the newsroom at work. The end. I actually like the toupee moment there.
Yeah.
Anything that's like self-deprecating from Sean Connery is always unexpected.
Well, because, I mean, how like, he was wearing toupees since Bond.
Right. Like 62 Bond, like the earliest Bond.
And I'm sure this was just like, never again.
Yeah.
I'm done with this crap.
Yeah. But that was like the only laugh out loud moment that I had, honestly. And the whole thing was when he takes off the toupee. I kind of like cracked up there.
I did like the "War at Last" headline.
Yeah, that is
I was like, okay. But see, that's it, getting back into satire.
Right.
After it's just been this kind of like conspiracy spy thriller. And it's like, but you put all the satire on hold for that. And now you're getting back into it with we have to pause for a 3-minute commercial break.
It's really messy. The story is overcomplicated. And the end is not very satisfying. I think the only reason that I would ever suggest that this is worth checking out is because of how weirdly prophetic it seems in different places. That you have, and not that this hadn't been called out thousands of times by other, like, in the early 90s, early to mid 90s, pamphlets of like, oh, they're going to target the World Trade Center. Whatever they do, it's going to be a plane or a bomb that they set off at the World Trade Center. And so it seems like it would have been impossible to predict beforehand, but a lot of people made that prediction. So maybe it's not so crazy that they called it out here. But the fact that we have a president who literally puts targets on the World Trade Center and then uses that as an excuse to attack an uninvolved Middle Eastern nation and just bomb them into oblivion and take their oil wells. That's literally exactly what happened in Iraq, like 20 years later. And it's just crazy that the film gets every detail of it right, just 20 years off, even though the rest of the story doesn't really work so great. But I like Sean Connery here. It is weird how it's like he's delivering a sermon to people about how the world should work and how it does work and stuff like that. But none of it's very hard hitting because everyone in the movie is a hypocrite. Everyone's saying it's terrible that things work this way, but I'm really glad that it does because it benefits me. And so there's no one for us to be like, oh, but we liked that guy. Like, even Rafeeq is a bad guy. He was going to use nuclear weapons on Israel and America at the beginning of the story. And then he didn't because he's like, well, now I have gold. I don't need to kill anyone because I have everything I want. Yeah,
like, Sean Connery is the most likable, but even he isn't likable. Like, he's just like, well, I certainly don't want him not to succeed.
Right.
In finding the truth.
But at the end of the film, he's like, he understands that Rafeeq didn't do anything wrong and we're still going to bomb his country into oblivion.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go there and make a huge profit off of it for the news.
Yeah. Like he wanted the truth and he got it, but he can't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like, it was his quest for the truth for himself, but he doesn't care.
Right.
He just wanted to know the truth.
He just wants to be good at his job at finding the truth. He doesn't really care what the truth is. But I did like the star-studded nature of the cast.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna give it a thumbs down, but I was really intrigued because there was so much happening, but like you said, nothing's happening, and I was just like really struggling to try to follow what's going on. And because like everyone's like is like she was CIA, so no, she was just a reporter. It's like no, she was CIA. It's like okay, so
it's like okay, now I got to flip that toggle back in my head, even though it pays off in no way.
Yeah, it's like
irrelevant to me.
Well, they made a big deal about like you can make recordings into glass. It's like okay, well if we have that technology, anything can be a recording device, which it is. But then everything would be suspect.
Yeah.
Like if I was the president and I knew that you can record not only into glasses, then anything. You can literally record into anything.
So why would I only check his glasses?
Yeah, exactly. And especially when you have a beam that you can walk through that erases any recordings.
It's like, why isn't that everywhere? Why isn't that on both sides of every door to the Oval Office?
Exactly.
But yeah, no, probably a thumbs down.
Probably. I
listened to the book like 3 times this week, and I can't
pay
attention to it because I don't want people to know this part. That's why I'm whispering it into this microphone. I listened to it 3 times this week, and it's so hard to stay paying attention to because it's just like 20 pages of Patrick Hale is so great. His wife is cool. Now he's doing this. Now he's doing this. Now he's doing, and it's all the same thing. It's just, it takes 10 seconds to say what happened in the movie, but you could spread it out over 6 days if you wanted to, and they really wanted to. Thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
Yeah, it's a thumbs down.
What are we thinking letterboxed on this one?
Oh shit! I was supposed to letterbox this.
Yeah, I forgot to.
I probably have it much higher than you guys, just because my list falls off so quickly.
What was Death Screams about?
It was like 2 movies ago.
I don't remember it.
Death Screams is about kids who were the assistants of a baseball coach who were all getting killed.
Thank you. It's
by
a bad
baseball
title.
Coach.
It's such a
It's a terrible title, yeah.
I can't remember these ones that have titles that have literally nothing to do with the movies. I don't even know if anybody screams when they die in that movie.
Yeah, there's like these weird
Yeah, there's death screams that are just happening in the wind that don't have any characters connected to them. What do you got, Jess?
I have it at 70 out of 75.
All right.
It is below The Dorm That Dripped Blood, but above Death Screams.
All right.
Boy. I have it at 37.
Oh, you loved it, Richard.
37.
It's really up there.
Oh, my goodness.
Which puts it below Lady Chatterley's Lover, but above Pandemonium.
No. Okay, but no. I have it in 55. Right between you guys.
Right between us.
I have it underneath A Little Sex, but above Some Kind of Hero, which is in a lot of ways a completely different film.
It is a completely different film. In all the ways.
In all of the ways that 2 films can be different films. Other comparisons to the Iger sanction that I wanted to make. The president offers Hale hemlock as a beverage option, as a joke, and that was Eastwood's name in the Iger sanction.
I was waiting for you to ask me the last time something about hemlock.
The VP compares Lockwood's assassination order to the assassins who poisoned Socrates, and in the Iger sanction book, hemlock is specifically called out as the poison of Socrates. In the book, we learn that Homer Hubbard is something, his name is Horace Hubbard in the book, but in the book, we learn that Hubbard is a collector of art and owns a Pizarro. Pizarro! I just fed Turtleface a bunch of peanuts, which is the same artist that Eastwood's Hemlock character is hoping to collect in exchange for the film's titular assassination. But yeah, in the book, Patrick Graham, not Patrick Hale, Homer Hubbard is Horace Hubbard, and there's also a barely touched on subplot about a manned mission to Ganymede to mine for rare earth elements in space.
Why would they? How it wouldn't be rare earth elements?
Well, that's why they're so rare. It's because they're only on Ganymede. They're rare on Earth because very few ships make it back from Ganymede, from the Ganymedian surface. But the mission is sent by Mallory, and then Lockwood cancels it. And so the ship has to turn around halfway to Ganymede, and that's not really a thing. So they just have to abandon the mission and forego all the profits they intended to make. But yeah, other than that, the book honestly plays out pretty much the same way as the movie does. It just takes 4 times as long, and it's really not interesting from scene to scene. So I don't recommend seeking it out.
But the book is still about 2 nuclear bombs in play.
Yes. There's a few characters that are added for the movie. There's a few characters that are subtracted from the book, but overall, it's about basically the same thing. Rafeeq, Awad, these bombs, the arms dealer, etc., Mallory. It's basically the exact same story. It just takes longer to unfold in a book because it has to. The writer-director here was Richard Brooks. He has a pile of Oscar nominations for writing Blackboard Jungle, writing and directing Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, writing Elmer Gantry, writing and directing The Professionals, and writing and directing In Cold Blood. His only win was for writing Elmer Gantry.
Great movie.
Before his nominated works, he went uncredited for his collaborations with John Huston on the script for The Killers. After In Cold Blood in '67, he'd written and directed Looking for Mr. Goodbar on the way to this, his second to last film before 1985's Fever Pitch. He was married for a time to actress Jean Simmons from Guys and Dolls, Spartacus, and the English voice of Grandma Sophie in Howl's Moving Castle. The novel here was written by Charles McCarry. It was called The Better Angels. He's also the author of the 10-book Paul Christopher Spy series, which technically takes place in the same universe as this film's novel. This is the only adaptation of his work to the screen. The composer here was Artie Kane. He previously scored The Bat People, Brooks' Looking for Mr. Goodbar, and Irving Kershner's The Eyes of Laura Mars. In the 1980s, he transitioned to mostly television work, including 63 episodes of The Love Boat, 41 of Hotel, 18 Dynasties, 11 Wolves, and 65 Matlocks. Cinematographer here was Fred J. Konekamp. He's a DP on 90 episodes of The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Patton, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, Billy Jack, The Magnificent Seven Ride, Towering Inferno, Doc Savage, The Man of Bronze, The Swarm, The Amityville Horror, and so far on the show, Papillon, The Other Side of Midnight, When Time Ran Out, The Hunter, First Family, Carbon Copy, and First Monday in October. After this, he lights Splash 2, the TV movie. The editor here was George Grenville. He previously cut The Trial of Billy Jack, Billy Jack Goes to Washington, and Brooks' Looking for Mr. Goodbar. So far on the show, he's cut Tom Horn and Battle Creek Brawl. Later, he cuts the first Iron Eagle film. Sean Connery played Patrick Hale. He's James Bond. He's Darby O'Gill's son-in-law. He's Professor Henry Jones, Draco the Dragon, so many iconic characters, probably best known for his appearance as Zed in John Borman's Zardoz. We've seen him so far in Outland and Time Bandits. He's back this season for 5 Days, One Summer, and next season he reprises his most beloved role in Thunderball remake, Never Say Never Again. Later, he famously turned down the role of Gandalf in Lord of the Rings to play Alan Quatermain for his last live-action role in The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. For comparison, he turned down Thulsa Doom in Conan to play this part.
Yeah.
So that was a mistake also, I would say.
Yeah, he needs a better agent he needs a better coin to flip.
I think he was just like, there's so many names attached already. I've got to do this one, right? It's like, nobody has anything to do with this Conan movie. It's like, read the script. It's better.
It's like, Lord of the Rings? What the hell is that?
What is all this magic he's doing? Why can't there just be a Hyde Jekyll monster somewhere in this?
It reminds me of Spacey's Walter Matthau as Obi-Wan Kenobi. What the hell kind of picture is this?
George Grizzard, or Grizzard, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. He's President Lockwood. We saw him last as the governor in Seems Like Old Times. It's funny because in this movie he has the line where he says, like, that's how you stay the president. And I remember it Seems Like Old Times, there's a part where he's like,
Notice how I remain calm? I do that because I'm the governor.
Later, he makes TV appearances on The Golden Girls, Third Rock from the Sun, and then a few more film roles in Wonder Boys, Small Time Crooks, and Flags of Our Fathers. He also appears in 1960's The Twisted Image, in which he crazily stalks Leslie Nielsen's character. Yeah. So they're rivals in multiple films.
That's funny because also Leslie Nielsen also appears in Golden Girls.
There you go. So does Quentin Tarantino, who we weren't talking about, but he plays an Elvis impersonator in an episode.
Nice.
Jack Black's also in an episode of The Golden Girls. I just saw this on an Instagram reel yesterday. No idea. Robert Conrad played General Wombat. He's definitely best known for playing Jim West,
That's right.
Desperado, on the original Wild Wild West TV series, the role taken up by Will Smith in the remake, and much later he was Officer Hummel in Jingle All the Way. He, Sally Blake actress Katharine Ross, and President Mallory actor Leslie Nielsen all appeared together in Wild Wild West episode The Night of the Double-Edged Knife, 17 years before this film.
Nice.
Katharine Ross played Sally Blake. She is third billed with less than 10 minutes of screen time. She was Elaine Robinson, the daughter of Mrs. Robinson in The Graduate. She's Etta Place in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and we've seen her so far on the show for The Stepford Wives and The Final Countdown. Later, she's Donnie Darko's therapist in Donnie Darko, and in 1984, she married Sam Elliott, and they remain together today. They also share a daughter, Cleo Elliott, who's credited as Candy Kane in something called Murder for Dummies in 2020. G.D. Spradlin played Philindros. He also plays Senator Pat Geary in The Godfather Part 2 and a general in Apocalypse Now. We saw him last as Clements in The Formula, and after this he's in The War of the Roses, Clifford, the Martin Short Clifford, And related to his role in this film, he plays the president in The Long Kiss Goodnight, and Ben Bradley in Dick. Bradley was, of course, the editor of the Washington Post, who oversaw the reporting of Woodward and Bernstein. Bradley was previously portrayed by Jason Robards in All the President's Men, and more recently by Tom Hanks in Spielberg's The Post, and Alfred Molina in Jason Reitman's The Front Runner. Those were all the same character, played by Alfred Molina, Tom Hanks, Jason Robards, and G.D. Spradlin. John Saxon played Homer Hubbard. He has film appearances all the way back to the mid-50s in titles like It Should Happen to You and A Star is Born. Later, he shows up in Joe Kidd, Enter the Dragon, and so far on the show in Black Christmas, Beyond Evil, Battle Beyond the Stars, Blood Beach, and Running Scared. Speaking of the Bay of Pigs, wasn't that what that movie was about? And we mentioned the Bay of Pigs in this movie. Judge Reinhold and his friend accidentally stole a camera, and they're about to spoil the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Is that what that Running Scared is
I thought
about?
it was. After this, he shows up in a few Giallo titles like Tenebrae and The Scorpion with Two Tails. He's Lieutenant Thompson in Nightmare on Elm Streets 1 and 3, and later Beverly Hills Cop 3 and From Dusk Till Dawn. Henry Silva played Rafeeq. He was in the original Ocean's 11, Cinderfella, and so far on the show in The Manchurian Candidate, Virus Day of Resurrection, Alligator, and Sharky's Machine. He's back this season in Baker County, USA, and Megaforce, and later Cannonball Run 2, Lust in the Dust, Alan Quartermain, and The Lost City of Gold. Amazon Women on the Moon, Dick Tracy. He voiced Bane in one episode each of Batman the Animated Series, The New Batman Adventures, and Superman the Animated Series. And his last credits are as Ray Vargo in Jim Jarmusch's Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai, and then the Ocean's 11 remake, in which he seems to play himself, or he's at least credited as Henry Silva.
Didn't bring up Mad Dog Time?
No, I didn't. There's too many people in that movie. I can't get into it. Leslie Nielsen played Mallory. He plays Commander Adams in the 56 Forbidden Planet. He was Vincent and Kenneth Markham in 18 episodes of Peyton Place. We've seen him so far in Airplane and Prom Night. He's back this season for Creepshow. Soon after, he took on his breakout role of Frank Drebin in the Police Squad TV series, which was of course adapted into the Naked Gun trilogy. He also shows up in lesser parody titles like Repossessed, Wrongfully Accused, and 2001: A Space Travesty, but he's the villain of Surf Ninjas, he's Mr. Magoo in Mr. Magoo, he's President Harris in Scary Movies 3 and 4. Robert Webber played Harvey. He was juror number 12 in the original 12 Angry Men. He's General Denton in The Dirty Dozen, speaking of 12, and he's Sappinsley in Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. He's in Midway and 10, speaking of 12. It's a number, it's near 12. We've seen him now as Colonel Thornbush in Private Benjamin and Ben Coogan in S.O.B., and after this, he shows up in Wild Geese 2. Rosalind Cash played Mrs. Ford. Before this, she's in Clute, The New Centurions, and Uptown Saturday Night. We saw her last as Charlton Heston's love interest in The Omega Man. Later, she's John Emdahl in The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, and Sergeant Stone in Death Spa. Hardy Krüger played Helmut Unger. He started with mostly German film credits. He's Kurt Muller, or Mueller, in Hatari. Heinrich Dorfman in The Flight of the Phoenix, Muller in Paper Tiger, Captain Pottsdorf in Barry Lyndon, Major Ludwig in A Bridge Too Far, and Lieutenant Coetzee in The First Wild Geese. After this, he went back to exclusively German releases. Dean Stockwell played Hacker. He got a start as a child actor in the 40s, with credits in Anchors Away, Bud Abbott and Lou Costello in Hollywood, and perhaps most famously as the titular boy with green hair in The Boy with Green Hair. Between that and this, he shows up in Psych Out, Dunwich Horror. After this, I would say he's likely best known for his 97 appearances as Al on Quantum Leap, but he also has credits in Paris, Texas, Dune, The Legend of Billie Jean, To Live and Die in L.A., Once Bitten, Blue Velvet, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Captain Planet as Duke Nukem, that was the character's name. He's in Altman's The Player, McHale's Navy. He's the SecDef in Air Force One. He's Judge Hale in Rainmaker, and he's Mark Whiting in the Manchurian Candidate remake. He's also back later this season directing Human Highway. Ron Moody played King Awad. As I mentioned, we saw him last in Carol Reed's Oliver in '68. Later, he's in The 12 Chairs. After this, he has a credit in a 1995 TV movie called Oliver 2 Let's Twist Again, allegedly reprising the role of Fagin. Is that animated or something? Sounds terrible. He's also Merlin in the 1995 A Kid in King Arthur's Court. Sherry Machon played Erica. This was her first film, and she returns later this season as a dancer in Annie. Tony March played Abu. We had him in Partners as an aide. He shows up later in Ghoulies 4 as a crazy inmate. Jeffrey Wheat played Mike. This is only his second credit after playing a cameraman in an episode of Gimme a Break, but he seems to work predominantly as a camera operator on a mix of films, sitcoms, and reality shows, starting with Used Cars, and later 12 Bosom Buddies, 28 Just the 10 of Us's, 91 Growing Painses, 155 Night Courtses. Night Courts, because it's singular for the title.
It's Knight's Court.
Knight's Court. Oh, right. That's one of those ones.
feel like you need to turn this into a Christmas song.
Yes. 120. Whose line is it anyways? Joseph Whipp was John Brown. We've seen him so far in Magnum Force. He reunites with John Saxon as Sergeant Parker in A Nightmare on Elm Street. Tom McFadden played Billy Bob Harper. That was a reverend on the screen. He shows up earlier in They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Valdez is Coming, Black Sunday, and so far on the show in Running Scared and Love and Money. Later, he's in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which doesn't feature Joseph Whipp or John Saxon. He's in 976 Evil, and he's in the horror film Uncle Sam, which has that cool holographic cover. Ivy Bethune played Housewife. She's most recognizable to me as Ma Peabody, the farmer's wife from Back to the Future, whose barn Marty crashes into in the 50s. She also appears in The Man with One Red Shoe and as a Russian mother in the 2008 Get Smart reboot. Jennifer Jason Leigh played Young Girl. She's the daughter of actor Vic Morrow. We've seen her so far in Eyes of a Stranger, and she's back soon for Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Later, she's in The Hitcher, The Big Picture, Backdraft, Single White Female, The Hudsucker Proxy, Existenz, The Machinist, The Jacket, Synecdoche, New York, Annihilation, Chris Pine's Pool Man movie, and the Fargo TV series. And I worked with her on Tarantino's Hateful Eight, in which she played Daisy Darmergoo. Kiva Lawrence played the CIA receptionist who pretended not to know who Homer Hubbard was. We've seen her so far in To All a Good Night and Schizoid. This is the first film we've covered that she survives, spoiler alert, after in those films she is thrown from a balcony dressed as Santa Claus and then drowned in a hot tub respectively. Barry Cahill played Husband. That's the guy that's getting shot on the couch, I think. Before this, he's in Hang 'em High, Coffee, and we've seen him so far in Westworld. So he's in two things where people are acting out their fantasies in a simulation. Keith McConnell played Sir Robert Smythe. He's Harding in Time After Time, and in 1985 his last credit was as Lord Cavendish in Young Lady Chatterley 2. So there's two Young Lady Chatterley movies. Alexander Zale played Professor Fahim. He's back this season for Firefox and Francis, which is two movies. Could easily be one. Later, he's in Invasion USA, and much more recently in a movie I really enjoyed called Wakefield, about Bryan Cranston faking his death and just watching his family for years from the guest house. It's really funny, actually. Donald Bishop played Congressman. He appears earlier as a hearings chairman in The China Syndrome, and so far on the show in our minisode review of Captive. Later, he's in Deep Cover, Bye Bye Love, and episodes of Seinfeld, Dr. Quinn, Buffy, and he was a Pope impersonator on Arrested Development. Diane L. Wilson played Woman with a Dog. This is her only acting credit. She has mostly stunt titles, and credits like Charlie Chan and The Curse of the Dragon Queen, which we've covered, Class Reunion later this season, and beyond that, Meatballs Part 2, Lust in the Dust, Moving Violations, Silver Bullet, Space Camp, House 2, The Second Story, They Live, My Stepmother's an Alien, Hero, an episode of The Secret World of Alex Mack, Bushwhacked, Matilda, Dante's Peak, Out to Sea, and the 1999 Wild Wild West reboot. Of course, adapted from the show starring her Wrong is Right co-star Robert Conrad, aka General Wombat. George Scaff played Colonel Kadir. We've seen him so far as Stuart Martindale in Frogs, and a doctor in The Other Side of Midnight, as well as a part in First Family. He also has a small role in Exorcist II: The Heretic. Milton James played Hogreb Army Doctor. He's a voice actor by trade, with credits as De Pierce and Jodo in Lupin III, Blastoff in Transformers, Bruno in Dirty Pair, several characters in Ninja Scroll, Sino in the Street Fighter animated movie, various voices in English dubs for Ghost in the Shell, Xenogears, Trigun, Outlaw Star, and then mostly video game voices, including Grim Fandango, Command & Conquer, Spyro 2, Diablo 2, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, Bully, GTA 4, Mafia 2, Hearthstone Heroes of Warcraft, and Cars 3, the video game. Edward L. Moskowitz played WTN Technician. This is his only acting credit. He has mostly sound department on series like It's Your Move, Growing Pains, Empty Nest. He did 112 Golden Girls, Phenom, Sister Sister, News Radio, 75 Larry Sanders shows, 60 Sybils, 12 Will and Graces, 8 Gina Davis shows, which I didn't know was a thing, 11 Californications, 21 Pushing Daisies, and 4 New Girls, to name a few. Myron Natwick played Admiral Leary. We've seen him so far in 3 Days of the Condor. Later, he's in The Corpse Grinders 2, the Wolf Lake TV show that was actually about werewolves, Tosh.0, iZombie, and Documentary Now. Paul Lambert played Defense Secretary. He shows up in Spartacus, Planet of the Apes, and The Godfather, and so far on the show in American Graffiti and Death Wish 2. Next season, he's back for Blue Thunder. Suzanne Reynolds played TV Woman Reporter. This is her only film role. She has makeup credits in Legend, Willow, High Spirits, and Batman. David Frankham played British reporter. He's the voice of Sergeant Tibbs in 101 Dalmatians. He's Larry Marvick on Star Trek the Original Series, and he's Captain Weber in The Great Santini. Art Evans played the warehouse guard. Before this, he was a cop in the first Death Wish. He's Blind Lemon Jefferson in Leadbelly. He's a baggage master in the sequel to current Patreon poll contender The Apple Dumpling Gang Rides Again, and he's in The In-Laws. We saw him last in First Family. Later he's in Fright Night, Ruthless People, Die Hard 2 as Barnes. He's Wallace Carter in Revenge of the Nerds, Albert Sr., Chris Rock's dad in CB4. He's in Bushwhacked, Tales from the Hood, Everybody Hates Chris, The Sarah Silverman Program, and The Proud Family. Mio Polo played warehouse guard. His second and last credit is for Party Guest in Fatal Attraction. Charlie Hutchins played a cabbie. He appears in one episode of The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., Reno 911, CSI New York, and OG, and he played Scrooge in an episode of I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. Robert Allen Brown played a motorist. He has early credits in Frankenstein Meets the Space Monster and The Mummy and the Curse of the Jackals. We've seen him so far in a minisode review of Seed of Innocence, and later he's Statler in Psycho 3. Last credit here is for Mickey Jones. He played a gunman. We love Mickey Jones. We've seen him now in Tom Horn's Stir Crazy and Making Love. He's back this season for The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, and later National Lampoon's Vacation, Starman, Total Recall, The Beverly Hillbillies, Sling Blade, Workaholics, Always Sunny, and an 8-episode arc on Justified. I think that's everything for Wrong is Right. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, you can find all our socials at linktree/vintagevideopod. And if you really like the show, maybe you should join our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast for access to all our monthly 70s reviews and a hand in choosing next month's film. Patrons are currently choosing between Apple Dumpling Gang, Norman Tokar's Western comedy about a degenerate gambler put in charge of 3 children who happened to strike gold in the late 1800s. It stars Bill Bixby, Tim Conway, Don Knotts, and Susan Clark. Beyond the Door, visitor director Ovidio G. Asinitis' supernatural horror film that serves as a co-ripoff of Rosemary's Baby and The Omen, following a pregnant woman possessed by a demon and due to birth the child of Satan. It stars Juliette Mills, Richard Johnson, and Gabriel Lavia. Bucktown, Arthur Marx's blaxploitation crime film about a man in town to bury his brother who sticks around to avenge him by taking on first the crooked cops responsible and the gang that rushes in to fill the subsequent power vacuum. It stars Fred Williamson, Pam Grier, and Thalmus Rasalala. Bullet Train, Junya Sato's action disaster movie, later remade in America as Speed, about a Japanese bullet train set to explode if it slows below 80 kilometers per hour, or about 50 miles per hour. It also just got a direct sequel in April in the form of Netflix's Bullet Train Explosion. The original film stars Ken Takakura, Sonny Chiba, and Ken Utsui. Cleopatra Jones and the Casino of Gold, Charles Bale's action-adventure sequel to 1973's Cleopatra Jones about another mission of the titular supermodel/super spy traveling to Hong Kong to rescue a pair of captured government agents from the so-called Dragon Lady. It stars Tamara Dobson, Stella Stevens, and Norman Fell. Crazy Mama, Jonathan Demme's action comedy about a trio of women who turn to crime when their family farm is repossessed. It stars Cloris Leachman, Stuart Whitman, Ann Southern, Linda Pearl, and Jim Backus. The Drowning Pool, Stuart Rosenberg's loose sequel mystery thriller about a PI traveling to Louisiana to protect an old flame from the husband she cheated on. It stars Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward, Anthony Franciosa, and Murray Hamilton. One of Our Dinosaurs is Missing, Robert Stevenson's adventure comedy based on David Forrest's novel The Great Dinosaur Robbery, and renamed as a parody of the 1942 title One of Our Aircraft is Missing, about spy secrets being smuggled out of China in a dinosaur skeleton. It stars Peter Ustinov, Helen Hayes, Clive Revel, and Derek Nimmo. Return to Macon County, Richard Compton's action drama sequel to 1974's Macon County Line about drag racers in the 1950s American South picking up chicks and staying one step ahead of the law. It stars Nick Nolte, Don Johnson, and Robin Mattson. Smile, Michael Ritchie's satirical comedy about an annual Santa Rosa, California beauty pageant. It stars Bruce Dern, Barbara Felton, Michael Kidd, and Jeffrey Lewis. The Swinging Barmaids, Gus Triconis' exploitation title about a serial killer of cocktail waitresses. It stars Bruce Watson, Laura Hippie, and Katie Saylor. And White Line Fever, Jonathan Kaplan's neo-noir crime film about a long-haul truck driver facing off with the corrupt overseers of the trucking industry. It stars Jan Michael Vincent, Kay Lenz, Slim Pickens, and L.Q. Jones for a 50th anniversary review next month. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing Zombie Holocaust, aka Zombie 3, aka Dr. Butcher MD, which IMDb describes like so. Members of an expedition in the East Indies encounter not only the cannibals they were looking for, but also an evil scientist and his zombie army. We leave you now with the trailer for Zombie Holocaust, aka Zombie 3, aka Dr. Butcher MD.
No! Oh, don't do this to me, please, Doctor! Ah! Ah!
Patient screamed, disturbing me. Performed removal of vocal cords.
His name is Dr. Butcher, M.D., medical deviate. He has perverted the science of medicine for his own maniacal means. Dr. Butcher, M.D., medical deviate.
You will die, only to live again in a younger body. Then you can tell me if the operation was a success. What it's like to pass from life to death, and death to life.
See Dr. Butcher's diabolical surgery.
You must have a psychopathic deviant in the hospital.
Dr. Butcher loves New York. There are so many attractive patients to operate on.
I could easily kill you now, but I'm determined to have your brain. It will be the culmination of my career.
Dr. Butcher, medical deviant.
I'm on the verge of discovering the key to increasing man's lifespan by over 100 years. Prepare the operating table. I'm anxious to experiment on a male Caucasian brain. Well, the time has come for you to play your part in this momentous occasion. Science must surmount all obstacles, and this requires certain sacrifices. It will comfort you to know that generations to come will reap great benefits from my experiments.
You're a bloodthirsty lunatic.
Dr. Butcher, M.D., medical deviant. He's a depraved, sadistic rapist, a bloodthirsty, homicidal killer. And he makes house calls. Dr. Butcher.